Salut!
Hello, lovely viewers. Nine's coming your way with another edition of Football Planet, your football program on Africanews. Here are the headlines. June 2010 to June 2020. 10 years ago, the first World Cup on African soil. The continent and South Africans remember it vividly. 10 years on, what remains of this historic event? South African journalist Sepan Mawane will be analyzing the situation with us. The debate on whether to maintain or postpone Afcon 2021 has been revived. General remains CAF's priority. This is according to the Secretary General of CAF, Abdel Ba. But is it really possible to organize this African Cup in 6 months? The answer to this question coming up shortly. Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah returning to competition this week in England. Khalidou Koulibaly and Fazil Ghulam will play in the finals of the Copa Italia and the return of the Spanish La Liga. The exploits of African players in Europe will come at the tail end of the show. All this and more coming up.
On développe tout ça dans une poignée de secondes. Bienvenue dans cette émission.
Welcome to Football Planet. What's up with CAF? Some of you may have asked yourself this question when we talked about Afcon 2021. All we know is that the Continental Football Body still wants to organize it in January 2021. At least, that is what its Secretary General Abdel Ba said in an interview with Cameroon's Radio Sport Info. However, the global health crisis offers no guarantees. Organizing the Afcon in January seems unimaginable. Brigitte Ugwe and Nyasha Mutizo have the story.
Millions invested, stadiums good to go, but athletes stuck behind shut borders. Cameroon was geared up to host the next Africa Cup of Nations in January 2021. But since the coronavirus pandemic took over, one question is looming in everyone's mind. Will the next Afcon take place as scheduled? The Confederation of African Football is still optimistic its flagship competition will go ahead in January 2021, but has a plan B in place. The Continental Governing Body's Secretary General, Abdel Munaim Ba, says moving the tournament to June or July is not an option, but January 2022 would be an alternative in the event the finals fail to be staged next year. CAF has already cancelled the March and June qualifiers, and Ba says it is now impossible to have August matches go ahead as planned. With some countries intending to have their domestic leagues running in the next few months and also following the resumption of football in Europe, CAF hopes Afcon qualifiers could continue in October at a time when 4 rounds of matches would have already been lost.
And we are hoping for that miracle. If not, we may have to wait until 2022 to attend the Afcon in Cameroon. In any case, CAF does not rule out this option in view of the very busy calendar of 2021, according to its Secretary General. But we are not there yet.
Je vous le disais en titre, il y a...
As I told you in the headlines, 10 years ago, Africa hosted the first World Cup. It was in 2010 in South Africa. It was a historic event that was marked by not only the deafening noise of the Vuvuzelas, but above all, its success. 10 years on, what remains of the event's legacy? We spoke about it earlier with South African journalist Sepan Mawane of Soccer Laduma. But before that, a story by Amel Nkenga and Ignatius Ano.
This competition raised a lot of hope for South African and African football in general. For the first time, the World Cup was being played on the continent. Historic as the echo of this great premiere fueled an almost unparalleled excitement. First, for the symbol represented by Nelson Mandela South Africa and the curiosity surrounding Africa's ability to successfully organize such an event. After a month of competition, skepticism that accompanied the event was eliminated. On a sporting level, Africa came close to a catastrophe, with Ghana, quarter-finalists, having saved the honor. On an organizational level, the 2010 World Cup was a success. This World Cup was not just a Vuvuzela concert. It was also about spectacle, emotions, and a lot of cash for FIFA. Nearly 3 billion euros in prize money for FIFA, more than 3 million spectators, a challenge that was met to perfection. But 10 years on, the legacy seems to have faded over time. This is reflected in the condition of the stadia, which cost more than 1.7 billion euros to build. Socially, nothing has changed. poverty is still high, while the South African economy has been slowing down for several years.
Yes, many South Africans are still far from realizing a change in their economic fortunes, but memories of the event still lingers on. On the line is Sepa Mawane, a South African journalist with Sokala Duma. Welcome, Sepang, to the program. How do South Africans feel when they look back 10 years ago? Is the excitement still there?
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of excitement in the past, because also on television they've been showing games from the World Cup. We're able to see South Africa, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Ghana, who did very well in that competition. So it's bringing back a lot of memories that are making people happy. Even on social media, a lot of people have been talking about it, because it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You never know when the World Cup will come to Africa again. So looking back at those moments, thinking about what we went through as a country during that month of the World Cup is something special, and it will always remain in the hearts of the people of South Africa. I think a lot of people are proud that we were able to host the World Cup, and it was a successful World Cup, because a lot of people were doubting that an African country can host the World Cup and host it well. So this past week has really been a good time for South Africans to look back with a lot of pride, and I have seen that many people are happy with what we were able to achieve by hosting the World Cup 10 years ago.
So before this tournament, many wondered what would happen to the expensive stadiums built to host the World Cup. What is the current state of the stadiums 10 years on?
It's been a bit difficult for the infrastructure, for the stadiums, and this after the World Cup, many of the stadiums have not been used quite a lot. For example, you go to Mbombela, that's a stadium that has not been used much, especially ever since Mpumalanga Black Aces, the team that stopped playing there. It's the same situations in places like Port Elizabeth, in Rustenburg at the moment, where there's no teams. But the problem also in South Africa is that fans don't go to the stadium a lot. So those stadiums don't get full. I think the only time we get a full stadium in this country is when Kaizer Chiefs are playing against Orlando Pirates, the two biggest teams in the country, when they play each other in the Soweto Derby. That's the only time we have a full stadium at FNB Stadium. So it's been a bit of a problem ever since then in terms of maintaining, keeping the stadiums running, because it is an expensive thing to do.
What has the World Cup done for South African football in concrete terms that we can still see a decade ago?
Well, look, I think for us, it brought about the stadiums, first of all, because before the World Cup, we didn't have stadiums like this. And one wonders if we would have had stadiums such as these ones 10 years on. I think it also just brought about even more professionalism in the South African game, maybe even in the African game as well, to make people realize that we can actually have professional leagues that are well run by the people. And I think the World Cup managed to do that. I mean, our league, yes, was run properly before that, but I think there was a lot more that the administrators in this country got to learn when the World Cup got here. So that has played a key role. I think in terms of having these stadiums, the way administrators are doing their work, that helped a lot. And sponsorship, I think companies started putting in more money into football because there was a lot of interest in football at the time.
One last question. You mentioned earlier the beautiful memories of the 2010 World Cup. What are your memories?
Well, for me personally, I think I have two. It would obviously be the first goal of the World Cup, because I was at the stadium working as a journalist, and it really brought us all together. No matter which company you worked for, we were all just happy and celebrating that goal. And I think in that moment, we even forgot that we are journalists working at the stadium. So it was actually quite a moment that we enjoyed. And the final, I mean, having a team like Spain winning their first World Cup in South Africa made it even special for me, because I was there. I watched Iniesta scoring that goal and, leading Spain to the World Cup. So the fact that Spain won their first ever World Cup in South Africa. I think that was a special moment too that we can never forget.
It was a very beautiful memory, as we all have of this first World Cup on African soil. Thank you very much, Sepang.
It's a pleasure.
South African journalist Sepang Mawani from Johannesburg. Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah will help Liverpool towards winning the Premier League in 30 years. Yes, the Premier League resumes this Wednesday after more than 3 months due to the coronavirus outbreak. The Reds will play Everton on Sunday, but the English Premier League resumption kicks off on Wednesday with a top-of-the-table clash between Manchester City and Arsenal on March the 30th.
City et Arsenal.
In Spain, La Liga is already back, and the title battle between Real Madrid and Barcelona is more exciting than ever. The Madrid side beat Eibar 3-1 on Sunday to respond to the Catalan leaders who smashed Mallorca 4-0 on Saturday, thanks to no smaller part of captain Lionel Messi, who scored and provided 2 assists. In Italy, we have 2 Africans in the Coppa Italia final. They are Senegalese defender Khalidou Koulibaly and his Algerian teammate Fazil Goulam, who play for Napoli. They eliminated Inter Milan on Saturday in the semi-finals after a 1-1 drawn game. They progressed on a 2-1 aggregate scoreline. Napoli will face Juventus of Turin, who edged out AC Milan after a 0-0 drawn game, which saw Cristiano Ronaldo miss a penalty. We've come to an end of an exciting edition of Football Planet on Africanews. For more sports stories, visit our website www.africanews.com. Have an excellent week. Goodbye.